How many husbands have heard their wives say, "If you love me, you'll let me do this"? I heard those words during what was supposed to be a romantic dinner for our 6th anniversary in Seattle, and they hit me hard. My 31-year-old wife, Rachel, dropped a bombshell on me. She calmly told me that she wanted to explore relationships with other men outside of our marriage, almost as if it was just a simple request. I had planned a special dinner at one of our favorite places, the Redwood Bistro, a cozy yet fancy restaurant known for its intimate setting and great wine. I even surprised Rachel with a diamond bracelet she had admired since her last birthday. But during the meal, I noticed something was off. She seemed tense and not like her usual self. Our conversation, which usually flowed easily, felt awkward. Rachel kept looking around the room as if searching for someone, instead of focusing on me like she usually did. She stared at her wine glass, the flickering candle, and the menu she wasn't even reading. Finally, after we had finished our main course and were having another glass of wine, Rachel spoke up. "Josh, there's something I need to tell you. It's been weighing on me for a while, and I can't ignore it anymore." I put my wine glass down and looked at her, confused. "What is it?" Her voice took on a serious tone, the kind she used when talking about something important. My first thought was that she was finally ready to discuss starting a family. We had talked about it on and off for years, but always decided to wait until we had more stability in our careers and finances. We had achieved those goals, and I was eager to take the next step. "Josh, I want to do something that I'm not sure you'll agree with right now, but it's something I've thought about deeply, and it's important to me," Rachel said. "I need to explore life outside of our marriage. I need some freedom to figure out who I am, and through that I believe I'll be a better wife for you." I was completely blindsided, confused, angry, and hurt didn't even begin to cover what I felt. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely controlled. I placed my hands on the table, palms flat, and locked eyes with her, trying to decipher what she was really saying. She hesitated, then continued, avoiding my gaze. "I need to explore other relationships, Josh. I want your understanding beforehand so there won't be any misunderstandings or hard feelings when I do." My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel my face getting hot. "Other relationships? What kind of relationships are you talking about, Rachel?" "Well, I'm not entirely sure yet, but I think I might want to see other men." I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. "Are you serious? You want to have an affair, and you're asking for my permission to sleep with other men? Are you out of your mind?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Josh, please keep your voice down. This is hard for me to say, and I don't want to make a scene." I realized she had chosen to tell me this in a public place, knowing I wouldn't want to make a scene. It felt like she planned it that way, and it made me feel trapped. I wanted to yell and tell her exactly how I felt, but I was too shocked and aware of where we were to do anything. My appetite vanished, replaced by a knot of nausea in my stomach. "Why? Why do you want to see other men, Rachel?" I asked, my voice hoarse with disbelief. "I think I need the space to figure out who I am, to understand my needs better," she said softly. "This isn't about leaving you, Josh. It's about me finding something that I'm missing, and I need your support." "Support? You want my support to go out and sleep with other men? Are you even hearing yourself right now?" "No, Josh, it's not like that. I love you and I'm not leaving you, but there's something I need to experience, and I think it will ultimately make me a better wife for you. I want us to grow old together, to start a family when the time is right. But right now, I need to explore this part of myself." I was utterly speechless. My wife of 6 years had just told me over our anniversary dinner that she wanted to have sex with other men and expected me to be okay with it. She wanted to carry on with our marriage afterward as if nothing had happened, promising that she would somehow be a better partner for it. I couldn't comprehend what she was saying. I couldn't find the words to respond. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what Rachel had just said. The restaurant seemed to disappear as I tried to grasp the seriousness of her request. After a long pause, I stood up and carefully put my napkin on the table. Without saying anything, I grabbed my wine glass, finished it, and walked out of the restaurant. "Josh, where are you going?" Rachel called after me, but I didn't look back. "I don't know," I muttered to myself more than to her, "but I think you'll need to find your own way home." I stepped out into the cool Seattle night, hardly noticing the drizzle that had started. My mind was a mess, and I couldn't think straight. I found my car, started the engine, and just drove, not caring where I was headed. The pain in my head was intense, a dull throb that seemed to spread throughout my entire body. I drove for hours, not paying attention to the streets or the time. When I finally stopped, it was early morning and I found myself parked in a quiet, unfamiliar neighborhood. I had no idea how I had ended up there. Exhausted, I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes, trying to make sense of everything. But the thoughts were too jumbled, too chaotic. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep, right there in the car. When I woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. My neck was stiff, and my body ached from the uncomfortable sleep. I stretched and yawned, still groggy. For a moment, I hoped that the events of the previous night had been a bad dream, but the cold reality settled in as I remembered everything Rachel had said. I needed to think, figure out what to do next before going back home. My first priority was finding a cup of coffee and something to eat. I spotted a small diner nearby, parked the car, and went inside. The place was quiet, almost empty, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee was comforting. As I ate breakfast, I started thinking about what to do. There was no way I could let Rachel go out and sleep with other men while we were still married. That would ruin everything we had built together. Even if she had her reasons, I couldn't accept them. Maybe she was going through some kind of crisis that made her think this was okay. I didn't know. But I knew I wasn't ready to be the husband who just stood by and let it happen. I pulled out my phone, which had been off since last night. When I turned it on, I saw several missed calls and texts from Rachel. She was worried, asking where I was, if I was okay, and when I would be coming home. But at that moment, I wasn't sure I wanted to go home at all. Not yet, at least. Over the next hour, as I sipped my coffee and tried to gather my thoughts, I formulated a rough plan. I couldn't just let this situation unfold without taking control of it somehow. It was time to go home, but I knew things would never be the same again. With a sense of dread, I drove back home. When I pulled into the driveway, Rachel was already at the door, looking anxiously towards me. As I got out of the car, she hurried over, trying to embrace me, but I stepped back. "Josh, where have you been? I've been worried sick. I thought something might have happened to you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I needed some time to think," I replied coldly. "Rachel, I'm going to take a shower, and then we need to have a serious talk. We're going to discuss this exploration plan of yours." I brushed past her and headed upstairs to the bedroom. The suit I had worn the night before was wrinkled and uncomfortable, and I was eager to get out of it. I stepped into the shower, letting the hot water run over me as I tried to clear my mind. I knew this conversation would be one of the most difficult I'd ever had, but it was necessary. I needed to understand where Rachel's head was at, and more importantly, I needed to make it clear where I stood. After getting dressed in fresh clothes, I went downstairs to find Rachel sitting at the kitchen island, nervously fidgeting with her phone. I made myself a cup of coffee, grabbed a notepad and a pen, and sat down across from her. "Okay, Rachel, tell me again why you think having relationships outside our marriage is a good idea," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Josh, I feel like I need validation as a woman. I don't feel like my needs are being met right now, and I need to figure out what those needs really are. I need to understand myself better, and I think this is the way to do it," she explained, looking at me, hoping I would understand. "So you don't even know what your needs are, but you're willing to risk everything to find out?" I asked, my frustration clear. "And you expect me to just sit back and wait while you figure it out?" "No, Josh, I'm not leaving you," she replied. "I'll still be here in our home with you, but I need the freedom to do things on my own terms, to explore this part of myself," she said, her voice almost desperate. "And when exactly do you plan on starting this exploration? Tonight, tomorrow, next week?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. "Anytime, I guess. But I wanted to talk to you first to make sure you understand," she responded. "Understand? No, Rachel, I don't understand this at all," I said, shaking my head. "When we got married, we promised to be partners and lovers for life. Now you're telling me you want to find other lovers. What am I supposed to think? It sounds to me like you're trying to end our marriage without actually saying it. It's not like that. Josh, I just need to feel something that's been missing. We've been so focused on work, on achieving our goals, that we've lost the fun we used to have. I don't feel appreciated the way I did when we first got married." She confessed, "Everything I've done has been for us. Rachel, I've worked hard so we could have a life together, a future. And now you're telling me that's not enough, that you need more." I could feel my anger building, but I tried to keep it in check. "Are you planning on having sex with other men?" I asked directly, needing to face the real issue. Rachel hesitated, then looked down at her hands. "I don't know, Josh, maybe if it feels right with the right person." "So, you're planning on cheating on me, and you expect me to be okay with it?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger. "It's not cheating if you know about it, Josh," she said softly, as if that made it any better. I felt my blood pressure rising and had to take a deep breath to calm down. Let me get this straight, Rachel. You want to go out, meet other men, date them, and possibly have sex with them all while staying in our home, living your life as if nothing's changed. Do I have that right? It's not that simple, Josh, she replied, still not meeting my eyes. I just need to explore who I am to understand what I need. But I love you and I want us to stay together. It seems pretty straightforward to me, I said coldly. You want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to keep me here as your husband while you go out and experiment with other men. Have you thought about what this will do to us? What this will do to me? Rachel finally looked up, tears welling in her eyes. I know this is hard, Josh, but I believe that this is something I need to do. And after a few months, I'll come back to you completely and will be stronger for it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You honestly think that after sleeping with other men, you can just come back and everything will be fine? That I'll just accept it and move on like nothing happened? Josh, if you love me, you'll let me do this, she said, her voice breaking. If you love me, Rachel, you wouldn't even think of doing this, I shot back, feeling my heart break even as I said the words. She bit her lip, her expression a mix of sadness and determination. I've made up my mind. Josh, this is what I'm going to do. You can't talk me out of it. There was the ultimatum that would change everything. She was willing to risk our marriage and our future for some vague idea of self-exploration. I realized that nothing I said would change her mind. She had already decided, and there was no turning back. Okay, Rachel, if you're determined to do this, then I have some conditions, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. You're going to move out while you do this. I won't live under the same roof with you while you're out seeing other men, and you're definitely not bringing them here. If you want to do this, you're going to do it on your own, away from our home. She looked shocked, as if she hadn't considered the possibility that I might set boundaries. But where am I supposed to go? You can stay with Jessica if she's so supportive of this idea, or you can find a short-term rental. You'll be responsible for all your expenses while you're gone. I'm not going to fund your exploration, Rachel, I replied firmly. Rachel blinked, absorbing the reality of what I was saying. I don't want to move out, Josh. This is our home. Not while you're doing this. It isn't, I said. You want an open marriage? Fine. But you're going to have to live with the consequences of that choice. I'll stay here and you can do whatever you need to do elsewhere. She was silent for a long time, then finally nodded. I guess I don't have a choice, do I? No, you don't, I said, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. Let me know where you're going to stay by the end of the week. And for now, I want you to move your things into the spare bedroom. I can't share a bed with you, not while you're planning this. Rachel didn't argue. She just nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks, and left the kitchen without another word. As Rachel walked away, I felt a hollow ache in my chest, the weight of what had just transpired sinking in. The woman I loved, the one I had promised to spend my life with, was choosing to explore life without me. It felt like a slow, painful goodbye, even though she was still here physically. The next few days were tense, filled with an awkward silence between us. Rachel quietly moved her clothes and personal things into the spare bedroom, and we avoided each other as much as we could. I spent most of my time at work or at the gym, trying to deal with the frustration and hurt inside me. The house, which was once full of laughter and love, now felt cold and empty. On Thursday evening, Rachel came into the living room while I was watching TV. Josh, I talked to Jessica, and she said I can stay with her for a while. I'll move in with her this weekend. Good, I replied without looking up from the screen. That's probably for the best. She hesitated as if wanting to say more, but eventually just nodded and left the room. I knew that moving out was the first step in whatever journey she was planning, but it didn't make it any easier to accept. I kept hoping she'd change her mind, that she'd realize how much she was risking and come to her senses. But that hope was fading with each passing day. Saturday came and Rachel began packing her things into boxes. I watched from the doorway as she loaded them into her car, feeling a strange mix of anger, sadness, and helplessness. This was really happening. She was leaving, not just physically, but emotionally too. Before she left, she turned to me one last time. Josh, I don't want to do this if it's going to destroy us. Are you sure we can't work something out? I looked at her, struggling to keep my voice steady. Rachel, if you really loved me and wanted to stay married, you wouldn't be doing this. I've asked you to reconsider, but you've made up your mind, so go ahead. But don't expect me to be here waiting for you when you decide you're done with your exploration. She didn't respond, just looked at me with tears in her eyes before getting into her car and driving away. I stood in the driveway watching her tail lights disappear down the street, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. That evening, I changed the locks on the house and reset the garage code. It was a symbolic gesture as much as a practical one, a way of drawing a line between the life we had shared and the new reality I was facing. I couldn't control what Rachel did, but I could take control of my own life. The first night alone in the house was tough. The silence was overwhelming, and everything in the house reminded me of her, of us. I tried to distract myself by cleaning and organizing, anything to keep my mind busy, but nothing worked. Eventually, I gave up and went to bed, though sleep didn't come easily. The next morning, I woke up early and decided to go for a run. It had been a while since I last ran, but I needed to clear my head, to do something physical to help me process everything. As I ran through the streets of Seattle, I tried to focus on the rhythm of my breathing, the sound of my feet hitting the pavement, anything to push thoughts of Rachel out of my mind. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. I knew my marriage was over, even if Rachel didn't realize it yet, and I had to start thinking about what that meant for me and my future. The days that followed were a blur of workouts, and trying to keep myself busy enough to avoid thinking too much. I avoided the places Rachel and I used to go together, and I spent as little time as possible at home. The house felt too big, too quiet without her, and I didn't know how to fill the void she had left behind. One evening, I decided to call my lawyer. I hadn't told anyone about what was happening between Rachel and me, but I knew I needed to start planning for the inevitable. The lawyer I usually consulted for business matters recommended a colleague who specialized in divorce. I made an appointment to meet her the next day. When I sat down with a divorce attorney, she was straightforward and professional. I explained the situation, Rachel's decision to pursue relationships outside our marriage, and my need to protect myself in case things got worse. "Josh," she said, "I understand this is a difficult situation, but it's important that you take steps to protect your interests. We'll start by documenting everything. I'll draft the necessary papers, but we'll hold off on filing them until you decide it's time to move forward." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. I didn't want to be in this position, but I knew I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. I had to be prepared. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I had minimal contact. She had settled in with Jessica, and I suspected she was already exploring the new freedom she had wanted so badly. I, on the other hand, threw myself into work and tried to keep my mind off what she might be doing. I didn't want to know the details. It was too painful to think about, so I tried to keep busy. One Saturday, about a month after Rachel left, I decided to join a cycling group I had heard about. I needed something to take my mind off things and help me reconnect with the world. The group met at a park on the edge of the city, and I joined them for a long ride through the hills around Seattle. The physical effort was exactly what I needed, and by the end of the ride, I felt a little more like myself. After the ride, a few people from the group invited me to grab a beer at a local bar called the Blue Ridge Tavern. I agreed. And as we sat around talking, I realized how much I had missed just being around people. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A small step toward rebuilding my life without Rachel. One of the women in the group, a nurse named Diane, caught my attention. She was tall with long dark hair, green eyes, and an easygoing smile that made her approachable. We talked about the ride, our jobs, and eventually about life in general. I didn't tell her about Rachel, not yet. I wasn't ready to open up about that part of my life to someone new. But there was something about Diane that made me feel at ease. Something that made me want to get to know her better. As the evening wound down, I found myself asking Diane if she'd like to go kayaking the following weekend. I half expected her to say no, but to my surprise, she agreed. "I'd love to," she said with a smile. "I've never been kayaking before, but it sounds like fun." We exchanged numbers, and I left the bar that night feeling lighter than I had in weeks. For the first time since Rachel had dropped her bombshell, I felt a glimmer of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could start over and find happiness again. The following weekend, I met Diane at the lake for our kayaking trip. The weather was perfect, sunny with a light breeze, and the lake was calm, making it an ideal day for someone new to the sport. Diane was enthusiastic, asking questions about the gear and how to paddle. I was happy to show her the ropes, and as we glided across the water, I found myself enjoying her company more and more. We spent a few hours on the lake paddling and talking about everything from work to travel dreams. Diane's laughter was so infectious that, for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely relaxed. It was a big change from the tension and turmoil that had filled my life recently. With Diane, everything felt simpler and lighter. After we finished kayaking, we went to a nearby restaurant called the Dockside Grill. It was a casual place with outdoor seating that overlooked the water. We ordered lunch, and the conversation flowed easily. Diane talked a lot about her work at the hospital, and I found myself sharing more about my life than I had planned. I didn't mention Rachel, but I felt like I was slowly letting my guard down. As the sun began to set, we decided to take a walk along the waterfront. We stopped at an ice cream stand, and Diane insisted on buying me ice cream, joking that it was her way of thanking me for the kayaking lesson. As we strolled along the boardwalk, ice cream in hand, I realized just how much I enjoyed being with her. It wasn't just about filling the void Rachel had left. It was about connecting with someone new, someone who made me feel good about myself. When we reached the end of the boardwalk, I walked Diane back to her car. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say, but she made the decision for me by leaning in and giving me a soft kiss on the lips. It was brief, but filled with promise, and it left me standing there stunned and smiling like a fool. "I had a great time today, Josh," Diane said, her eyes sparkling. "Let's do this again soon." "I'd like that," I replied, still a bit dazed. She smiled, got into her car, and waved as she drove off. I stood there for a few minutes, watching her tail lights fade into the distance, before heading back to my own car. As I drove home, I replayed the day in my mind, feeling a sense of optimism that had been missing for a long time. Over the next few weeks, Diane and I saw each other regularly. We went on more kayaking trips, played a round of golf, and even took a hike through the mountains. Each time we met, I felt more and more connected to her. Diane was kind, intelligent, and funny. A breath of fresh air in a life that had been suffocating under the weight of Rachel's betrayal. One Saturday evening after a particularly fun day of golf, Diane and I decided to have dinner at my place. We barbecued on the patio, enjoying a bottle of wine as the sun set over the Seattle skyline. After dinner, while we were cleaning up, Diane took the car keys from my hand, put them on the counter, and asked if she could see the rest of the house. I was a bit surprised, but said yes. I showed her around, ending with the master bedroom. Diane looked around and then turned to me with a playful smile. "Nice place you got here, Josh," she said. "Thanks," I replied, suddenly feeling nervous. Diane stepped closer, and before I could say anything else, she kissed me. This kiss was deeper and more passionate than before. One thing led to another, and soon we were in bed. It was different from anything I had experienced with Rachel recently. No tension, no hidden agenda, just two people enjoying each other's company. The next morning, I woke up to the sight of Diane lying next to me, her arm draped over my chest. She looked peaceful, and I realized how much I liked having her there. We spent the morning together, having breakfast on the patio and talking about our plans for the day. It was comfortable, easy, exactly what I needed. As we were finishing breakfast, Diane asked me a question I had been dreading. "Josh, what are your plans for the future? I mean with Rachel, are you going to divorce her?" I paused, knowing this moment was inevitable. "Yes, Diane, I'm planning to file for divorce. I've been seeing a lawyer, and I'm just waiting for the right time to finalize everything." Diane nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I understand. I just needed to know where we stand. I really like you, Josh, and I want to see where this goes. But I don't want to get too involved if you're still tied to Rachel." "I get it," I said, taking her hand. "I like you too, Diane, a lot. And I want to see where this goes as well. I promise you, I'm moving forward with the divorce." "I'm not going back to Rachel," I said. She smiled, looking relieved. "Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page." As the morning went on, I realized I had reached a turning point. I was ready to move on from Rachel and start a new chapter in my life, one without the pain and betrayal of the past few months. The following Monday, I made an appointment with my lawyer to start the divorce process. It was time to close that chapter for good. I told her that Rachel and I had been living apart for a while, and I wanted to make the separation official. The lawyer agreed it was the right time and promised to handle everything efficiently. Over the next couple of weeks, her investigator collected the evidence needed to confirm what I already knew. Rachel had been dating multiple men, most of them married, and they had been meeting at Jessica's apartment. The knowledge didn't sting as much as I thought it would. Instead, it solidified my resolve to move on with my life. Rachel was served with the divorce papers. That evening, she showed up at the house, clearly upset. I opened the door to find her clutching the brown envelope. Her face flushed with emotion. "Josh, what is this?" she demanded, waving the papers in front of me. "You filed for divorce?" Why? I told you I'd be coming home soon. I even thought about coming back this week. I took a deep breath, determined to stay calm. Rachel, it's too late for that. You made your choice when you decided to pursue other relationships. I told you I didn't want you to leave, but you did anyway. Now I'm moving on. She stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. But I told you I needed to find myself, to feel good about who I am. I didn't think you'd actually go through with this, I said with a bitter laugh. So, have you found what you were looking for? Are you validated enough? Have you figured out who you are? Because it seems to me like all you've done is destroy what we had. Josh, I love you, she said, her voice breaking. I see now that I might have gone too far, but I'm ready to come home. We can start fresh, work on our marriage, and have the family we always talked about. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. Rachel, you walked out on our marriage. You chose to sleep with other men thinking I would just sit back and wait for you to come to your senses. But I'm not going to be here when you decide you're done with your exploration. It's over. She looked down at the papers in her hand, her shoulders slumping in defeat. So that's it. You're really ending this. Yes, Rachel, I said firmly. It's over. I've already made my decision and I'm not going back. You should move on too. She didn't say anything more, just turned and walked away, clutching the papers tightly. I watched as she got into her car and drove off, the weight of the moment settling over me. It was a painful but necessary closure. The next month passed quietly. Rachel and I avoided going to court by settling the divorce amicably. She received half of our assets, as was her legal right, and the house was sold. I used my share of the money to buy a new place, a fresh start in a different part of Seattle. Word of Rachel's behavior had spread among her colleagues at the charter school where she taught. I heard from mutual acquaintances that the school had asked Rachel to keep a lower profile because some parents were uncomfortable with the rumors about her personal life. It wasn't long before her actions started to catch up with her, both personally and professionally. A few months later, I found out through the grapevine that Rachel had been diagnosed with an STD. It wasn't life-threatening, but it needed treatment and meant she had to stay away from sex for a while. On top of that, she was pregnant. The father was reportedly one of the married men she had been seeing, a teacher at her school. Everything had spiraled out of control, and I couldn't help but feel a grim sense of vindication. Meanwhile, my life had improved. My relationship with Diane continued to grow, and we moved in together. A year after Rachel left, Diane and I got engaged and started planning our wedding for the summer. To top it off, we found out we were expecting a baby due around Christmas. My life, which had been shattered, was now being rebuilt with someone who truly cared about me. Looking back, I saw that Rachel's betrayal, though painful, had ultimately led me to a better place. I had learned to value myself, set boundaries, and find happiness on my own terms. With Diane by my side, I was ready to start a new chapter filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. Second story. I'm writing this to share my pain and frustration. I was in a relationship for 5 years. But I realized I was too hard on myself and was spoiling the other person. Despite my love and trust, they became distant and stopped caring. I asked why repeatedly, but got no answer. Eventually, I had to leave because they didn't care about my health or well-being. After the breakup, they abused me emotionally, making me feel even worse and question my decision. They cut off all contact within a week, and I was instantly single on social media. I later discovered that they had been cheating on me for 3 years. I found the person they were seeing through social media photos, where they had been posting love hearts and affectionate comments. I reached out to this person, who admitted they were hurt as well. I thanked them for their honesty, as I had been with someone who was the biggest liar I've ever met. The worst part was not just that my ex hid this from me, but their whole family did too, allowing them to steal money for years. I'm writing this as a reminder of the betrayal and deceit I experienced.